With YouTube attacking alternative media, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon for just $1 per month. Link below. Over the course of the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of articles come out about waiters and waitresses who got stiffed on a tip on a very large bill. And oftentimes the stuff blows up and results in that particular server getting a lot of money in compensation from people around the country and the world who, well, feel for this person. Like, oh, you got screwed over on a tip. You deserve it. Now, I myself, and this is just who I am, I'm really not big on tipping culture. It's not that I'm against tipping, but it's one of those things where it's like, there's a lot of pressure to tip. It's almost like too much pressure at times because of stories like this. But I'm not against giving somebody something extra for their service, and if they've done a good job, I do tip them. I just don't like the culture that I feel surrounds it. Like, I don't want to ever feel like I demand that of my audience if they're, like, oh, if you like it, you better super chat. But I always feel weird, but I feel the same way, like, with the server doesn't want to sit there and, like, kind of go like, well, sir, did you leave the 20%? You know what I mean? So it's one of those weird situations, but ultimately, I do like it, when the server gets something and doesn't get screwed over. And that's kind of where we find ourselves in the story right here, where a server was mad when a church didn't tip her on a $735 order, and now she's fired. And basically what's happening here is a server at an Outback Steakhouse in Palm Beach Gardens says she was fired on Thursday after posting on social media that she was not tipped for a $735 takeout order placed by the Christ Fellowship. Now, this is where we do get into a little bit of murky area. Okay, it's a takeout order. Okay, do you tip at McDonald's? Do you tip at Burger King, right? That's a takeout order, but ultimately it's the same process. You order your food, they prepare it, they give it to you, and you don't really ever tip them, but it's expected when you go to a restaurant. It's always kind of a weird conundrum we find ourselves in when it comes to tipping culture, which is probably one of the reasons why we're one of the only cultures in the world that actively pushes for it. Outside, not so much. Now, Tamlin Yoder, 25 of Lake Park, said Christ Fellowship ordered 25 steaks, 25 chickens, and 25 potatoes on Wednesday morning at the restaurant. She says, we take the order over the phone, we put the order together, take payment, and then take the order to the car. It's a lot of work just as much as serving. Well, it is. That's prepping a large ass order. 25 steaks, 25 potatoes, 25 chickens? For like what? For breakfast? Yoder said the person from the Christ Fellowship came to pick up the order, and when Yoder put the food in the car, she received no tip. Yoder said because she spent most of her shift preparing the 75-item order for Christ Fellowship, she only made in total $18 in tips that day on other orders. Now, that is unfortunate, but at the same time, that's one of those weird, again, it's a weird situation. She is hired to do a job. She's hired to prepare the meal and take it out to the car. Should she have been given a tip? I guess that's up to the person who did it, and it's up to whatever you guys think. I mean, that's a pretty big order, and if she's losing out on money that other way, I mean, in some states, in many states, they have, like, let's say this is in California, right? So if this isn't Palm, I want to make sure this. Oh no, this is in Florida. I don't know the rate in Florida, but I know in California, for example, waitresses and waiters, servers are paid minimum wage. And then including tips, right? So it's like they don't live off their tips in the same way they do in other states where they have a minimum wage that I think is like $2 or $3 or something. But then the way it works in a lot of those states is that they have to be compensated by the restaurant if they don't make that much in tips. So if they don't make minimum wage, then they have to be compensated by the restaurant. It's a weird, complicated rule, and it does need to be overhauled and changed. But at the same time, I just kind of find it funny that it's a takeout order and she's upset about no tip. It's like if it was serving 25 people, right? If it was serving a huge group of 25 people, I could see then having more of a complaint. This is, again, where the story gets a little bit odd because it really boils down to your personal sensibility on the issue. She says, tips is how we make our money. We still make low wages as servers. Yoder said out of frustration, she posted on Facebook that Christ Fellowship left her no tip after an order totaling $735, but did not say where she worked. Yoder said a male friend who saw the post told her to delete it, and he told her he would call Christ Fellowship about the incident. Yoder said the friend told her the church was going to contact the restaurant to make amends. When Yoder arrived at Outback the next day for her shift, she was told by her manager that Christ Fellowship got a full refund for the $735 order, and she was fired. Kathy Koch, a spokeswoman for Outback Steakhouse, says that per company policy, employees cannot post about customers on social media and can be subject to termination if the policy is violated. Koch declined to go into the specifics about the incident. And that's like, I understand that too, right? Like if she would have been like some customer from some mega church, because this is a mega church, gave her, stiffed her on a tip, you can see how there would be like, it's not saying specifically who, but because she named them and then someone called to complain and that got him involved. That's pretty funny. It's funny in a sad way, not in a funny way, but like not in a ha-ha way, but like in a, oh, that's kind of crappy. Now, Christ Fellowship expressed their apologies about the incident on their Facebook page, and said that their intent was to find a way to get a tip to the employee and did not desire in any way for punitive action to be taken. At that point, it's kind of like, it's kind of how it is. And there's been times where I've accidentally like not had enough to tip someone, I guess you could say the appropriate amount. I've gone back at a later date and tipped them, like just to be on the fair side because they did a good job. So yeah, like I get it, but the company policy is one of those things. She still posted about it, which is what got her fired. Now, the spokesperson here says the group is trying to make the situation right and that members usually leave a generous tip on takeout orders because a lot of church members work as servers. Saying that night we had a volunteer go to the restaurant and pick up the order since we were having a big conference. He probably didn't know to tip since it was a rush of the moment thing. We love our volunteers, and the one chosen to assist with this pickup errand was not aware of our gratuity tipping practices. At no time did Christ Fellowship staff dine in a restaurant that evening as we were hosting a major event at the time. And says that the Christ Fellowship are now trying to contact Yoder. Yoder said her termination won't stop her from pursuing another serving job because she's devoted to her work, saying, "One day I'd like to own my own restaurant. I love this business." And that's good. You always want to love what you do. If you don't, then why do it? And it's good that the church wants to reach out to her. In fact, the update here to the story is that she told the Palm Beach Post on Monday that Christ Fellowship reached out to her and compensated her after she was not tipped on a $735 to-go order. She said that the compensation totaled more than a tip. Saying here that Christ Fellowship and a couple of church families came together for me. But an Outback has not contacted her since her termination. So she got a little bit more than a tip. All right. So it wasn't just a game of ouch, ouch, just the tip. It was, a little bit of shaft in there too. And that's good in this case. It's good that she got the compensation. It's one of those weird stories where you have to kind of laugh at the whole process of it because you're like, she's upset she didn't get tipped. Right. And again, that boils down to this, I guess you say this, the way tipping culture works is that, you have servers that do get a minimum wage or a server's wage. And I don't know the laws and the rules of Florida. I just know them for California. And, they do live a lot off of tips and they are taxed on tips and everything else. And so, yeah, when you're spending all that time working on an order, you want to make sure that you get that you get paid and that you are being compensated for your time. And this is where the problem lies in terms of the serving industry. When I used to do security for a casino, I had to guard a lady once for 3 hours who had just won $292,353.75. And I guarded her, as she got she signed all the documentation. I guarded her as she got the huge novelty check. I carried the huge novelty check out to her car. She had a check for $11,000 in her hand. And I'm thinking, because I was 19 at the time, I was thinking like, oh, I'm going to get me a tip. I'm going to get me a hell of a tip. Right. And then we get to the car and she goes like, well, I've got $100 and I've got $13. So I'm going to give you the $13. And my first reaction was all like, really? You got a check for 11 grand in your pocket? I've been with you for 3 hours and you're only going to give me $100, you're only going to give me $13. But then I stopped for a moment. I'm all like, well, to be fair, that is $13 more than I had when I came on in, and it gets me lunch and a pack of smokes. So, you know what? I'm just going to call that a win. And I think that is the best way to approach tipping. When I used to work at my drive-in movie theater, I would jumpstart cars all the time. I've changed tires. I've changed batteries. I've, taken people to go get gas for their cars. I've done all this stuff above and beyond what my job parameter is. And I never went into it expecting to get a tip. And that's one of the reasons why I think I am the way I am on this issue, is because I look at it and I go like, well, like, I can understand you got a job, you're working, you're putting together this order and you expected to be compensated for it. But at the same time, not every day is Christmas. And I can see venting about it on social media, and I'm glad they compensated her, and I'm glad that she's taking another serving job. So in the end, she still came out, I guess you could say, relatively on top. But yeah, it's just the fact that she got fired over it really sucks. That's the worst part about it. And I really think this would be a time for servers to really start looking at these laws. And I don't want to say form a union, mostly because I'm not super big into unions. But I feel like in this particular case, that might be something worth doing. Only because if you can get that compensation, at least minimum wage. Christ, have that be a thing. Minimum wage plus tips. And here's the thing too: in other cultures, like there are places out there that don't want you to tip the server, but they also like charge a little bit more and they pay their servers a little bit more. I mean, we're not talking like Amy's Baking Company that straight up stole tips from employees, but there are places out there that try different models and it seems to work. In fact, Adam Ruins Everything has a whole episode about restaurant business and a big segment in there about tipping, and really goes into the nitty gritty about why ultimately we should find an alternative, because it create situations like these, and ultimately no one really benefits from them.